Today, we have an awesome guest by the name of Greg McKeown. He knows so much about essentialism and what it means to have the things that are necessary in life to help us not only in our environment, but also to succeed. He's a best-selling author from the New York Times. He has multiple businesses. And so, Greg, I want to welcome you to the Whole Person Podcast. How are you?
It's great to be with you. Thank you, Evan.
You bet, man. Well, for starters, it's kind of funny. I noticed that your books are color-coded on the side of you. Is that a part of your essentialism?
Oh, I suppose it probably is. There's the core idea of essentialism is less but better. Right. So that instead of just doing more but worse, more but shallower, more but busier, you're trying to do fewer things done better. And so that can be applied, that design ethic can be applied to organizing one's closet, which I normally just suggest as a metaphor for essentialism, but of course could be literally done, or organizing books, or organizing life, which is really what the book I wrote, Essentialism, is focused on.
So I'm a real estate agent, and so I get to see how people live. And it's really unique to see how they take care of their stuff, whether they have a lot or a little. What started you on this journey of essentialism, and why do you feel like it's important to everyone?
Well, I was working with companies in Silicon Valley and noticed a predictable pattern that these entrepreneurial ventures started off being really focused at the beginning, and it led to success. Success breeded options and opportunities, which sounds like the right problem to have, but it did in fact turn out to be a problem if it led them to what Jim Collins has called the undisciplined pursuit of more. If you fell into the undisciplined pursuit of more, what happened is that these ventures would plateau in their progress or even start to fail altogether. I called this eventually the paradox of success, because as it turns out, success is not a great teacher. Bill Gates said that, because it teaches us that we can't be wrong. And so it can breed this more and more and more process. And whether that's at the organizational level, as I noticed in Silicon Valley, or whether even at the societal level, like we saw in the real estate catastrophe of 2008, or which is more to the focus of the book and my work, at the individual level, as soon as you start doing too many things without really thinking about it carefully and thoughtfully, you're going to start to be maybe busy but not productive. You're going to feel stretched too thin at work and at home. You're going to feel like your life is a function of other people's agenda for you. They're hijacking your day often. Right. And so this is the pattern that led me to write Essentialism. And this was the observation. The way out, as I argue in the book, is the disciplined pursuit of less. So you're going constantly over the things that really matter, eliminating everything that doesn't, and then building a routine that helps you to really do those things over time in an easier and easier way.
Right. I can't remember who said this. You might know, so feel free to plug whose ever name, but we go from a state of order to disorder. And what I've learned through this process is I'm constantly having to pay attention to my environment to make sure things stay in order. How, as an individual, both in business and in life, are we able to keep ourselves in a manageable order, getting rid of things that are distracting, whether it's materialistic or just saying yes to too many things, to getting down to what we really need to focus on, both in life and in business and in health and in any area of life. That's what it simply comes to. So what would be your advice for that?
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is that the number of things that we could do or that we feel pulled to do or that other people are doing massively exceeds the available time and resources that we have. They're just stating that clearly. We're not talking about 10% too many things or 50% too many things or even 100%. I mean, we're talking about like 10 times or 20 times more than we can possibly do. So as a result of that reality, you're going to be saying no every time you say yes to something. The very act of saying yes, there's 10 things you won't be able to do that you could have selected. And what I observe is that a lot of people are trying to say yes to everything. They think if I just say yes to every opportunity, every option, every idea that I have, everything that I see on social media that people are doing, then I'll be successful. Then I'll break through to the next level of success. And in fact, what I've found is that essentialists who do break through to a higher point of contribution do it by being much more selective. So to use the closet metaphor, the difference is that for some people, their closets are overloaded. There's too much in them. You walk in, you can barely make your way around them. There's stuff on the floor. There's stuff everywhere. And the essentialist closet, if you were to go to an essentialist closet, there's just a few things in there. It's just the right things. The things they wear often, the things that fit, the things that they look great in. To use Marie Kondo's phrase, they spark joy. And that's the difference. Now, how do you achieve the difference? In a closet, you'd do three things. You would first, if you were trying to go from closet A to B, you would take everything out of the closet. You would explore everything that's in there. You'd take each item one by one and say, look, do I love it? Is it great? Do I wear it often? And so on. And if the answer is yes, then it would go back on the shelf. And if the answer is no, then you eliminate it. You get rid of it. And then, of course, what you'd need to do in the closet is not just do this one time. It's not an every decade thing. Maybe every week you would do it. You would just spend a minute, not taking everything out, but every week you might look in there, make sure you're tidying it up. You're taking out maybe one item per week, eliminating it, passing it on. You'd have some sort of ongoing process so that you stayed, to use the word that you originated the question, in order. And similarly, those three steps, explore, eliminate, execute, are the same steps for making decisions as an essentialist. You explore what is essential, not what is just good or interesting, but essential, very important. You're looking for just the right few things to go after. And then number two, you eliminate the non-essentials. You don't just identify what matters and then try to do everything else anyway. You're trying to eliminate everything that isn't, let's say, 90% or above important. You're at least trying to question everything else. And then number three, you'd want an ongoing system, an execution system, so that maybe once a week you would be curating your life, exploring what's working, exploring what you're doing that mattered this week, looking at what you're doing that doesn't matter as much and actually trying to uncommit from it or just choose not to do it anymore, so that you're eliminating and organizing once a week. And then, of course, finally, you have this ongoing, repeatable behavior so that you not just do essentialism, but become, over time, an essentialist.
Would you, so as an entrepreneur, I'm looking at what you're saying. Not only does that work for my closet, but as a real estate agent, that could apply to real estate as well, because I'm thinking about the idea of exploring different ways to get business. Right now, everybody wants my money. Everybody wants to market me something. They have a new way of selling, a new way of buying, a new way of getting clients. And if I spent all my time doing that, I would have no money because everybody wants mine. How would we apply those exact same steps in that order within business as well?
Yes, completely. Essentialism is a decision-making framework. So if it includes a decision, essentialism applies. Instead of saying, well, does somebody want me to spend money on it? That would be a criteria. And it's so broad that, as you say, you'd be broke if you applied that. So that would be a non-essential criteria. Does someone want me to spend money on it? A different question would be, what's the one thing that I could invest in that would help me to grow my business by X% this year? The answers to that question are necessarily narrow, but that's what you want them to be. You want to be selective, because the more selective you are, the more thoughtful you are, the better chance you have of actually producing breakthrough results. But that's just one application. You can apply essentialism to the real estate business by simply saying, what kind of real estate agent am I? What kind of properties do I represent? What area do I represent? I live in next to Calabasas, California, and so we get mailers from various different real estate agents, and some of them have clearly chosen extremely narrow markets to serve, and that they become specialized even within the real estate industry. So they may say, look, we are representing this type of client very specifically, this geography very specifically. So they don't just do real estate. They have chosen an area to become an expert in. That changes everything. It's one decision that changes 1,000 decisions. They know who they serve and therefore who they don't serve. They know what kind of houses they would represent and therefore what houses they wouldn't represent. So in the end, by building a reputation in this area, by becoming better in the way that they would even do their mailers would change. Who you would send your mailers to would change. The kinds of companies you would work with would change. Who does your staging would change. How long you would expect that to be on the market would change. Everything would follow this strategic decision. So essentialism is about being more selective in your decisions so that you can reap the benefits of a consistent, coherent strategy over a long period of time.
I like how you used the word, it's a framework in which you make decisions by and how you will live your life. Because, I'm looking at my life or other people's lives and how they tend to move with the way the wind blows, or they tend to be reactive versus proactive. And by instilling this framework, you're causing yourself to be proactive versus reactive. And I think that's a mindset shift. So how does a person such as myself or anyone else go from a reactive mindset to a proactive mindset to start developing the habits to think like someone who is an essentialist?
Well, I just started a podcast called the Essentialism Podcast, and so sometimes on there I have worked with somebody and done like an essentialism intervention where we apply this real time. I just did it with a nurse from the UK who's working under unusual circumstances given everything that's going on with COVID, and we applied it right there. So in some ways, beyond the book, beyond the podcast, I think that it's going through a sort of self-intervention. Maybe we should just do that right now, and then
let's do it.
People will get to see it. So
sure.
Just tell me something then in your life or business that's very important to you, essential to you, really, really matters, but that you are currently underinvesting in.
I would probably say the thing I'm underinvesting in business is probably the time that it takes to get new clients. And then in my life and in my family life, I would probably say we're not dirty. We're not like terribly messy. Got 2 boys. My wife and I both work full time. I work from home. She works from her office, part-time daycare for boys. And so our house isn't like spotless. Our house isn't
sure always
picked up.
Yeah, sure. That would be
we want less. I want less.
it's a natural consequence of these trade-offs, right? Because every time we make a decision, there's an inherent trade-off. If you choose to invest here, you won't be investing there. And essentialists embrace that reality, while non-essentialists pretend it's not going to be true. That there is a path where they can end up with everything, and now. So let's take this business example then. So time to get more clients. Why does that matter so much? Just state the obvious. Why does it matter?
Well, without marketing and going out on appointments and doing these things, then you don't get business.
Okay.
It really changed for me during COVID, and I've had a hard time changing with COVID, if that makes sense.
Of course it does. Yeah. The whole environment changed. It changed everything, and it necessitates a pivoting and reprioritization. Everybody lost something. Everybody has had to change in some way. And what you're saying is, well, I feel like I had a system in place that was working maybe okay before, but now I haven't really figured out how to do it in the in this new reality.
Right.
The why you gave was, okay, if I don't generate the leads, and I don't make money. Okay, let me just give you another chance to go even deeper. Why does that matter so much to you?
Well, because if I don't make money, I can't provide for my family. If I can't provide for my family, you run the risk of financial ruin. And so if we want to go from the top down, by not doing this, I put myself in a place of not bringing in income and going into financial ruin.
Yeah. And it seems ridiculous, but just give me, why does that matter so much to you?
Because it would cause a lot of stress and pressure and take away the peace and the joy of being in a healthy spot financially.
Yeah. It would threaten the relationships and the quality of life that is what your life is all about.
Right.
So I see, at least myself, a connection between this very practical business decision and something jugular and essential underneath it. So it'd be easy, I suppose, some days to go, well, I'll get to that. I'll get to it. But actually, you can recognize as you evaluate this thing, it's important not just for the business. It's not actually just a business decision. It's a life decision. It's a family decision. It's a being able to even provide for my family, to be able to help keep us afloat. That's what's at stake. My role as a father, my role as a husband, my role in leading in my personal life is directly affected by this decision in my business world. Does that sound like an exaggeration, or does that sound right?
No, that sounds 100% right.
So let me ask you this. What does success look like with the marketing? I don't mean the output. I mean, if you were investing what per day, per week, would you feel satisfied that, well, I'm not doing perfectly, but right, I am making good progress towards this goal?
So in terms of marketing, it would be outbound cold calling to expired listings and to for sale by owners, a minimum of 3 times a week for an hour or two.
Okay. So let's you said outbound calls to specific listings 3 times a week for an hour or two. Okay. So how much are you doing right now? Honest answer.
Honest answer, 0.
Yeah.
Like a few weeks ago, maybe it was 2 hours, but it just shifts. I've let it shift.
Yes. This thing, I suspect, feels uncomfortable to do, and it's the easiest thing to put off because my suspicion is that it doesn't inherently feel very enjoyable once you're doing it. There's a lot of dead numbers. There's a lot of not interested. And so it's quite, there's something about it that can not be enjoyable. And especially I would think the thought of doing it is uncomfortable.
Correct.
Even the doing of it may not be as bad as the thought of doing it. Does this sound correct? Familiar?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I would, so let's say the success is doing this, you said 3 times a week for an hour. It certainly sounds like if you were doing that, it would be significantly improved from where you've been. Even it sounds like if you did it 3 times a week for half an hour, it would be improved from where you are.
Correct.
Okay, so let's set the goal more like that. So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what we've done so far is we've really explored what's essential. We've explored why does it matter. And now I'm wanting to really get to the execution so that there's a concrete plan that feels really likely to you. It's good just to the point where you say, Greg, I can do that. Like I'm going to do that. I've got the why. I know even the what, but I just am going to do it. It's so achievable now. And there's a few ways we could do that. One is to just even reduce the goal further. And that's what I'm wrestling with in my mind right now. I mean, if you're not doing it at all, making one phone call would be progress.
Right.
And maybe that's what the goal is. Maybe it's every day or
I think so.
Give me, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want you to give me what you feel like this. I would 100% do this. I just know I would do it. Go.
I have to pick a time in the morning on the days my children are in part-time daycare and just do it and guard that specific time. Where I've let that time go is towards working towards generating a podcast, towards interviewing, towards recording. And so while the podcast doesn't make any money, I'm spending way more significant amount of time doing this because it's a passion project. It's something I love versus the thing that actually puts money in my bank and allows the podcast to actually happen.
Okay, so one thing that you could connect this to is that you could simply do have a social contract that says, I won't spend 1 minute on the podcast until I have made one phone call. So you or something of those to that extent where you that's not quite bundling. But it's at least putting an order to it. You're saying the reward is doing the podcast. That's just fun for me. I'm enjoying doing it for me. So that's like, that to me is idea one. A second thought for me is just how do you make it more enjoyable? How do you actually look forward to doing it? Could there be a way to make it fun, enjoyable? I'm thinking, maybe you listen to music in one ear. Maybe you've got music online that you can listen to while you then make the phone call. So it's your favorite music, and that's just going and getting you. If somebody answers, you can obviously pause it, but something that just goes, I'm looking forward to that particular music. And maybe that music you only get to listen to. There's a certain band or there's a certain thing, and that's the only time you get to listen to it is when you're making those phone calls.
Let me ask you this. Ideally, one of the best times would be to make phone calls in the evening because that's when most people will be home work-wise. Let me move my computer here. I have curtains up, but all this right here was open to our living room at one point. Just recently we had it closed off and I made this whole area a private office.
Right.
So that I could work from home more easily, concentrate, real estate at night. But what I've been realizing with 2 boys, it's harder. My wife's pregnant, and I don't want these to just sound like excuses, but I've been giving myself passes of, hey, I'm going to help my wife. I'm going to help the kids get in bed. I'm going to do my daddy due diligence and then kind of be done and spend time with my wife because that's what they want. What really needs to happen at least 2 to 3 times a week is probably spend an hour of phone calling and let them take care of it and say, no, I need to spend time calling at night when people are home. And I just need to do this for us. but I feel like there's this war inside of me that says, well, I should probably be helping my wife. And I know my wife would want my help.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. That. If you were to suddenly try to negotiate an extra hour in the evening on top of all the time you're already spending away from them, you think that wouldn't go very well. You don't think that would feel, correct in the relationship, or that there could be tension in that in that ask. And I think that you're the best judge on the current ratio that you're making. I think that this is why we sort of skipped it, but this elimination part is so necessary. I mean, to me, it is plausible that what you need to do is eliminate the podcast. Or maybe there's something else you eliminate that's lower value, lower interest to you. Maybe you say, look, I am not going on social media one time until this is done. Or I'm just going to get off social media completely. I'm going to get that time rebate so that I can spend it invested in actually calling these people. So, I mean, let me ask it that way to you. What are non-essential things that don't matter at all, that you're over-investing in? Again, honest answer.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I would say probably social media. Because I don't feel like the podcast is a no-go, because this is what I'm trying to build a future platform off of. But I think I would say social media would be a big part of that. I got rid of a lot of my editing and stuff on the podcast to let someone else do it. So I would say, social media. And then even the times of recording. Not that I don't have to record the podcast, but maybe I put this might be a good idea. Maybe something that I need to get rid of is part-time daycare and put my kids in full-time daycare.
Well, the value choices involved here are complex and sensitive, and you'll need to figure them out. But my general view is to try to make the decisions now that will look wise in hindsight. So that, and by hindsight, I mean even 50 years from now or 100 years from now, what will have been the right decision? What's the best decision? In my own life, I find that the order of prioritization needs to be first, restoring and protecting the asset. That's you, so that you are well rested, that you have the mental presentness, the emotional alertness, and so on, to be able to really contribute, because you're the only vehicle through which any other contribution can be made. Number two is the most important relationships. For me, that's family, and my most vital relationships beyond my immediate family. And then third is the projects I take on out there. For me, if I get that prioritization right, basically an essentialist works from the inside out of those concentric circles. A non-essentialist works from the outside in. And the problem with working from the outside in is that the outer ring, all the projects out there, are infinite. It's like trying to drink the ocean. You'll never complete that and then suddenly have I solved everything out there. I did everything my business could possibly do, and now I'm going to invest in my family and later in myself. I mean, the order just causes so many problems when you get that prioritization order wrong. So I would encourage you to think about, well, what do I need to be doing to maintain this health personally? Then how do I invest in the family to make sure that that culture is strong, that those relationships are invested in and feel invested in, and that there's a sense of positivity, a sense of high trust? Because when those things are intact, a few things happen. One, you have more confidence to go and work out there, knowing your most important work is taken care of. And secondly, of necessity, you have to be more selective in what you do out there, because there's only so much of you left. So one of the things I do in my life is I have at 5 o'clock at night, I literally will leave my office here at home and I announce what time it is to the whole family loudly. So it keeps me accountable for when I actually am done. Now, that's not the perfect time for other people or the perfect solution, but it's a practical thing that I've done to try and keep the boundaries in place. Otherwise, when is it done? When is work done? There's always another call, there's always another email, there's always something else, and so on. So having that boundary has helped me to be more wise and selective about what I do and how much I take on. For you, I think it's not the amount of time you're investing right now. I don't think it's, I need more time in work from what I'm hearing. I think it's about having better boundaries, better organization, so that you can, even in less time, even if you had half the time you currently have, you can still produce a better output if you use it wisely, if you use it really thoughtfully. So I think it might be like coming up with a time where you're saying, these are my work hours. Outside of these work hours, I'm completely available. But in these work hours, I don't do anything but this work. Yeah, and among those items are the essential few things. You're doing these cold calls that you're seeing as so vital. Maybe that's the first thing you schedule outside of your family time. That, to me, this seems like an approach. Otherwise, I think you'll fall into patterns like many non-essentialists do, where they just burn their relationships and themselves out, doing all sorts of things out there. How does it strike you?
So the podcast is called The Whole Person Podcast. It's about faith, family, finances, friendship, fitness, and fun. And that those are the most important areas of life and how they all affect one another. What I didn't realize until this phone call with you is that is a framework of what I believe is to be essential in my life. But what I have yet to realize is I need to create a framework within each one of those and how to prioritize and make those important and actually apply it to my life. I did not realize that until this phone call, that this is a beginning process of essentialism for myself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What you sounds like you have currently is just a list of things that you see value in. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a step in the right direction. What I would recommend you do next is put it in priority order. If you only could have one, which it would be, and if you could only have two, which it would be, and so on. So that you really have the order clear in your mind. You can change it over time, but you need to have it clear. And then next to each of them, I just had a great conversation on the podcast with Ben Bergeron, who trains the fittest people in the world in these world championships for CrossFit games. And he one of the things that he did basically to be more of an essentialist is he took his values, he chose 5 of them, and I recommend less but better. So there's nothing wrong with 7, but it's harder to apply 7 than it is to apply 3, and so on. So the fewest buckets possible will help you to be able to manage it better mentally. But he chose 5, and he put it in a spreadsheet. Here are my 5 values, and next to each value, he said, "Here are the metrics to tell me whether I'm living them right now." So his first value was family, and one of his items was that he would leave the office at 5:25, and that meant, what it really meant is that he needed to be walking out of whatever meeting he was in at 5:25 in order to be leaving the office at 5:30 to be able to be home at 6. That was his daily thing. And so every day he would check it off on his little spreadsheet. And he said he probably managed, I think he told me, maybe 70% of the time he was walking through the door at 6 o'clock. But it became more and more known standard for the people he worked with. It became nothing to him to be in a meeting and just to start packing up at 5:25. He just not even talking about what he's doing, just packing up, and then he's walking to the door, and so literally he's walking out the office at 5:30, and he just, okay, we'll talk later on about this. Okay, thanks guys, bye. It became a thing, a norm. And so this is where the real work of prioritization works, to talk about values, to say these things, hey, I value them, without talking about the metrics, without talking about the trade-offs. I'm willing to actually do this instead of this other item, is the difference between, basically spoken essentialism and actual living essentialism.
That's awesome. That's like a truth bomb right there. That's just
the talk is so easy, isn't it? The talk is
it is.
And in my own life, I'm a struggler like everybody else. I'm in this to become an essentialist, to live it more fully every day in my own life. And it's one of the advantages of having written the book and now teaching it and speaking about it and being in conversation about it, is that you're accountable again and again to these ideas. So I'm with you in this, but I encourage you to use the structure that we just described, to be able to design something where instead of at the end of it, like, oh, by the way, darling, I'm going to need an extra hour 3 times a week in the evening. Good luck with that. How does that feel? You can feel, even as you said, ooh, that's not going to work. There's something off about that right now. Mm-hmm. But if you build the system and maybe you counsel together as you build it, you say, look, let's talk about what our values are. Let's talk about how we demonstrate those things. Let's talk about how I'm doing and how I need to do better in some of these trade-offs. Let's wrestle with this until I have something that's sustainable, that works, and the power of this. I mean, don't just think about the power of doing this over, well, Ben, he's done it for the last 3 years until those 5 values and the metrics with them became very intuitive and natural and effortless. I think about what that means for his family culture over 10 years, 20 years. Think about what it will mean that he's had that norm in place for his grandchildren. Think about how the impact of this could go on for literally for generations, so that there are people that he will never meet that will operate differently because he was so intentional now. And that's the power of essentialism. And that's what I guess we'll leave it on.
Awesome. Greg, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. We really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks so much, Evan. Thank you.
Take care.